Good day, students. This is home economics lesson. Last week we looked at care and storage of clothes. Today we shall look at simple sewing tools and equipment. Simple sewing tools and equipment are very important equipment in sewing. There is need to know these equipment and also learn how to use each equipment. These equipments are classified according to the way they function. Measuring equipment. These equipments are used for measuring one's body size, width of hem, pattern size during pattern drafting. So anytime one is taking body measurement or measuring the width of hem or drafting patterns, one can use measuring equipment for this. And the different measuring equipment that we have are ruler. Ruler is used to measure the width of facings and hems. And then we have longer rulers that could be used anytime one is drafting patterns. We draft patterns if we want patterns for individual body measurement. Then we draft them using brown paper, and then a long ruler could be used for that. Then hem marker. We use hem marker to measure the hem, to mark the hem of finished garment. Then we have tape measure. We use tape measure to take the measurement of our fabric, which is the yards we use in sewing, and then we also use tape measure to measure our body size, either the length, the width. We could use tape measure to measure, and these tape measures are normally having two sides. One side is in centimeter and then the other side is in inches. Care of tape measure. Tape measures are supposed to be cared for so that they could last long and serve better. The ways we care for our tape measures are: be careful not to cut your tape measure while cutting fabric or pattern. Tape measures are not supposed to be kept on the table at the process of cutting out fabric, because once tape measures are together with the fabric, there's always the mistake of cutting the fabric together with the tape measure. So once one is through with the tape measure, you keep it far away from the table so that while cutting fabric, you will not cut your tape measure alongside with your fabric. When your tape measure is not in use, also make sure you roll it up and store in your sewing box or bag. So once you roll it, it is important that you roll properly and possibly tie it with a thread and put it inside your box. And some of the tape measures are plastic, and when the plastic ones are dirty, one can easily wash them in soapy water and then dry thoroughly, roll and keep in the box. Marking and tracing equipment. Some of the equipment that we have are used for marking and also tracing. And these equipment are: we have our tracing wheel. Tracing wheel is used alongside with carbon paper to transfer marks from pattern to fabric. So this is normally possible anytime one is using pattern to cut out. One can easily transfer marks from pattern to fabric using tracing wheel. And where tracing wheel is not available, one could easily improvise with a pencil and then carbon paper, but pressing wheel could serve better. We have what is called tracing paper. These tracing papers come in different colors and they are used for transferring marks from pattern to fabric, and they serve better than the carbon paper because carbon paper could make your fabric to be dirty, but tracing wheel is made in such a way that it will not make your fabric to be dirty. Then we have what is called tailor's chalk. Tailor's chalk is a special kind of chalk and it comes in different colors. It can be used to transfer marks, to mark fabric anytime one is sewing, especially anytime one is doing freehand cutting. It would be easier to mark the fabric while sewing. Cutting out equipment. Some equipments are used for cutting out, and the common cutting out equipment that we are used to are scissors and shears. These scissors and shears come in different sizes and are used for different purposes. One, we call it pinking shears. Pinking shears normally have zigzag edges. They are known for their zigzag edges, and so they give zigzag appearance to anything that is cut with. So they are normally used to neaten edges of seams. Then we also have large shears. They are used for cutting out fabric. Then we have small scissors for cutting out papers and embroidery work. Care of scissors and shears. Do not use dressmaker scissors for cutting paper. What it means is that the ones you are using a dressmaker scissors, it is supposed to be for material only. You don't use it to cut paper. The moment you use it to cut paper, it becomes blunt and it will not serve well again. Then use small scissors for cutting papers. Small scissors are meant for cutting papers and they can also be used for embroidery work. And you are not supposed to drop your scissors or shears on the floor because they can get damaged. You have to protect your scissors from rust. What can bring about rust to scissors is when it is wet and it is not dry and is kept damp, it can rust. So protect your scissors from rust. And how we protect it from rust is that when it is wet, we wipe it dry. And anytime it comes in contact with water, we wipe it dry so that it will not rust. Then when scissors are hard to operate, we are supposed to apply machine oil at the joints. There are joints on all scissors and shears. So anytime they are hard to operate, machine oil is there, and so it should be applied at the joints. Stitch ripper. Stitch ripper is normally used for picking unwanted stitches and also used for opening of buttonholes. It is safer than razor blade for these purposes. Most of the times we use razor blade to pick unwanted stitches, and at the process we cut out our fabric. So in order to be able to pick unwanted stitches without problems, stitch rippers are better. So it is important that we get stitch rippers available anytime we are sewing, so that when there is need for picking unwanted stitches, we could use stitch rippers. Stitching equipment. There are some equipment that are used for stitching, And stitching has to do with joining of two or more pieces of material together. So one of the stitching equipments we have dressmakers pins. These dressmakers pins look like needles, but they have heads instead of eyes. They are used for holding two or more pieces of fabric or papers in sewing processes. So anytime you want to hold two or more pieces of papers together, especially during pattern drafting, you can hold them with dressmaker's pin. Or when you want to hold your fabric together in sewing before doing your temporary stitches, you can first of all hold them with the dressmaker's pin, so that the moment you finish holding with dressmaker's pin, then you can tack and then remove the dressmaker's pin. Then we have pin cushion and emery bag. Pin cushions are used for holding pins and needles when you are sewing, and then emery bags contain special dust which sharpens and polishes needles and pins. So it is better, your pins will always be intact if you have your pin cushions. Where there are no pin cushions, there's always the temptation of throwing pins about all over anytime one is sewing. But where you have a pin cushion, your pins will always be intact inside the pin cushion. And then your emery bag, which contains special dust, will always sharpen and polish your needles and pins. And so your needles and pins can stay safe, they can last longer, and they will stay away from rust. Then we have needles. Needles are normally available in different sizes and in types. And these needles are the basic, most important things that are used anytime one is stitching. So we are going to look at the different types of needles and the work they perform. One of the needles we call shafts. These shafts are of average length and they have small eyes. They are commonly used for hand sewing. When we said eye, is normally the hole that is inside the needle, not physical eyes that we use to see with, but there are tiny holes that are inside the needles where you fix your thread. That is what we call eye. So the eyes in shafts are very small and they are commonly used for hand sewing. Then we have betweens. They are normally short needles with small eye also. They are also used for hand sewing. Then crewels or embroidery needle. These types of needles have large eyes that are easy to thread. They are used for embroidery work. We all know that embroidery threads are normally larger than sewing thread, and as a result of that, the embroidery needle is supposed to have a larger eye so that the thread could penetrate inside easily. Then we have machine needles. These machine needles come in different sizes and they are normally used for sewing anytime we are using the sewing machine. Care of needles and dressmakers pins. The best way to care for needles and dressmakers pins are, we are not supposed to throw our needles and pins about to prevent our needles and pins from rusting. And so we put them inside small containers or white powder. Then do not throw needles and pins about to prevent accidents. Anytime needles and pins are thrown about within the house, one can easily match them and it causes accident and bleeding. So we're not supposed to throw needles and pins about. Then we use pin cushions for holding needles and pins. And we also use emery bag to sharpen and clean needles and pins. Thimbles. Thimbles are small cap-like metals or plastics, and they are normally worn on the mid finger to protect it from needle when sewing. So they are tiny, they are small, and then they are meant for protecting the mid finger anytime one is doing hand sewing. And sewing machine. This is a major sewing equipment and it is used for stitching. Then sewing thread. This is a sewing aid. It is used for stitching. It comes in different colors, different types of fiber, and different sizes, and different number of plies. Then we have sewing bag or box. This is a special container used for packing small sewing equipment, tools, and aids such as thread, tailor's chalk, and scissors, etc. So that is the end of our lesson. Where you have questions, you can always send it through my WhatsApp line. Thank you, good girls. Missing you. Bye.